I've seen this video and oh boy, I have many things to talk about. But remember, this is just a disagreement on the points he made. But before we get into my response, a little disclaimer here. I don't have Yinlin, so my understanding regarding Yinlin might be very flawed or very bad. I'll skip his intro. It's a really solid intro, nothing to really talk about to be honest. Man, I wish I could write an intro as good as this.
First of all, we have to discuss what made Yinlin such a desirable character back in 1.0. Or rather, what does Yinlin get right? Well, we have to point towards Yinlin's damage output.
I mean, yeah, that's one factor, but damage alone isn't everything when it comes to choosing a sub DPS in this game. There's also synergy and direct supportive capabilities between three characters. Although, to Thundah's credit, he addressed Yinlin's support capability later on.
Yinlin has, to this day, the highest damage output of any sub DPS within Wuthering Waves. This is due to multiple factors. First of all, Yinlin has been given access to a plethora of different damaging tools, all with the simple goal to complete her rotation. She features both good on-field and off-field output. While she is occupying your screen, she is capable of using her skill to enhance her basic attacks, something that other sub DPSs do not do. After this, she is also able to use her skill once more for another hit of AoE damage. Her basic attack's enhancement will also target every single enemy that has been given a mark, something she can easily do in an AoE with her ultimate. Noticing a theme here? All of Yinlin's abilities work in harmony, and rely on each other to function. As for her off-field damage, once her forte is full at least, she can cast Chameleon Cypher to give every enemy a judgment mark, allowing her to deal coordinated attacks. This ultimately becomes a bad thing as well. If half of Yinlin's damage relies on the fact that her heavy attack hits, what happens when she becomes interrupted mid-animation? That's right, she loses her coordinated attack, and just be glad it doesn't generate any resonance energy, because otherwise she would have lost that as well.
I'll assume the animation he is referring to is her forte/heavy attack, so as one of the remaining Karakara players, I think I'm the right person for the job to address this. He also has the similar problems of what if he missed even one Death Messenger, since all of his big PP damage ties to him landing 3 Death Messenger. Getting knocked around equates to missing 1 Death Messenger. No buts, no if. However, there's a legit workaround on that. Simply do a quick swap or swap cancel to another characters, and unlike Halaru, she doesn't have a time constraint to maximizing her heavy attack. Dodge and attack into her heavy works too.
If your entire kit works together and needs the other parts of the kit to function, mistakes become extremely punishing. Imagine if Jinshi simply wasn't allowed to enter her enhanced state if she was knocked out of the sky. That would be a massive time loss. And even then, it's not as damaging as Yinlin getting interrupted mid-heavy.
And that is a good design. Players shouldn't be able to mindlessly match their way prioritizing damage over engaging with the combat system to clear the endgame content. Whether the punishment is too harsh or too extreme, that is up to each player preference. But in my opinion, this isn't a harsh punishment. Because from the sound of it, according to this statement,
Yinlin has, to this day, the highest damage output of any sub DPS within Wuthering Waves.
She has the highest number in all of sub DPS. And she enabled, this is my own conclusion or what I can come up with, she enabled a single target focus unit such as Kalkaro to be able to handle AoE situation. If anything, I think she should be categorized as high risk, high reward character. The reward she offers is massive, but the risk involved around, getting her to that point is also massive to balance out.
That is by far the most annoying example within Yinlin's kit, but not the only one. Plenty of enemies can just run away from Yinlin, and due to Yinlin's tight rotations, this can be pretty damning.
Other characters can run into this problem too, not just Yinlin. Calculator Man is also a prime example of this. Even Charlie, believe it or not, can have this problem. The player just have to deal with it. I'm not saying it's not annoying to see the enemy move out of your big PP damage, but At the end of the day, the player just had to deal with it. Also, the what if her heavy doesn't hit or get interrupted has a same energy as what if Kongshi Liberation didn't crit. I know it's a false equivalency, but let me exaggerate things for unfunny jokes, okay?
The next reason why people liked Yinlin was her AoE capabilities. It was simply really satisfying seeing like 5 enemies hit with the might of Zeus at the same time. Keep in mind that at the time of Yinlin's release, people were still struggling in the early floors of the Hazard Zone and in Tower of Adversity. This was clearly reflected by Jianxin being considered a good character at the time.
Wait, really? Do people actually consider using Jianxin for her AoE capability? Okay, that's an eye-opening for me. Wow. I really have to look up more about Wuthering Wave meta. I thought she was considered good because of her utility and roll compression than her damage. Also, if my line delivery comes off as sarcastic or try to mock you, Mr. Thundah, I am very sorry. It's not my intention. I am genuinely surprised here.
Having a strong AoE performance was incredibly important at the time, as a lot of content was AoE, but as time went on, AoE became less and less of a focus.
Yeah, I can see where that's coming from. AoE become kinda less focused, but it's not to the point of becoming irrelevant. Kuro just shift from AoE focused, which I don't know if it truly is AoE focused during the 1.0 to 1.3 TOA to begin with. If you know, please correct me. To have a healthy balance between AoE scenario and single target scenario, 2 floors in Hazard Tower is the testimony of this philosophy.
People simply ran right past it with sheer damage output. Because ultimately, the AoE checks Yinlin used to help with became so easy you could use downright anyone to blaze past it.
Mr. Thundah, these statements contradict your point about what if her forte didn't hit or the enemy just run away. Because right now, all of the best DPS unit have some sort of AoE capability. Either they have a massive hitbox on their big damage move or they have CC built into their kit, meaning the likely chance of the player missing her forte should be in an unlikely territory considering how big it is. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it is unlikely that they are going to move out of the way completely. And just because people use DPS that has AoE capability doesn't automatically delete the needs of AoE characters for that scenario. Put Calculator Man into AoE scenario and see how he struggled to keep up with Xian Liao without Yinlin because that is not what he built for.
After all, Yinlin's damage is good, but it's not GN or Jinchi levels of good. Hell, even Cheng Li beats her in damage, and it's not even close either. Simply put, Yinlin's AoE performance just became irrelevant to her strengths.
And the thing about Kaokaro isn't built for AoE scenario segmented into this perfectly. You are comparing a supportive / buffer sub DPS to an on-field damage dealer that can support her teammates. They have different roles. You can't really expect character design to support first, damage second, to out-damage or compete with unit that meant to be a damage dealer.
Next up, Yinlin was a good buffer. Buffing up liberation damage was quite good at the time, as Genshin's long rotation was very off-putting for many. Kolcharo was also one of the most played characters at the time, with him taking perfect advantage of this buff. We also lacked a good skill damage buffer, so with the eventual release of Jinchi and Cheng Li, damage was all a support could offer them. Yinlin would thus become a strong option with them as well. She had plenty of quick swapping teams too. People used her a lot with Encore and Havoc Rover to sort of dual carry these characters, constantly swapping between the two to effectively gain 2 DPS characters. However, with the eventual release of Zhezhe and Sheng Liao, Yinlin lost her spot with Cheng Li, Jinchi, and Kolcharo, all in one update. While you can argue that Yinlin is best in slot with Sheng Liao, the Cheng Liao team ultimately ends up performing at the same level at worst.
I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I followed the line of thought here. Okay, this is just a statement for me. Since there is nothing to back you up on this point, it might be because of I don't follow Wuthering Wave meta, so I don't know if this is common knowledge for Wuthering Wave community, but you should give your reason or your insight and dig deep into why. Is it because of their synergy? Is it because of their gameplay? Is it because of their view time? Is it because of Xiang Li Yao already deals so much AoE damage? It is essentially a diminishing return of performance when he is paired with Yinlin. So, many players just put Aurea in because her coordinated attack is more single target focused.
Even her quick-swapping teams became quickly outmatched with the release of Cheng Li. Cheng Li performed better with both Encore and Havoc Rover, with Encore eventually being realized to be a main DPS with Thundah, and all of this assuming Yinlin has her signature weapon, String Master. So to recap, Yinlin's strengths used to be damage, AoE, and her buffing, but now all she has left is damage and in specifically one team she can buff.
How she isn't the best in slot of other team outside of her specific niche make her not good, or at least players should be more cautious to pull her. Any given characters in this game has like at least two things going on for them. Okay, maybe not a damage dealer. For example, Byakuya. She offers heals, thus can proc heal equal set effects, attack buff, albeit very clunky, and glacial damage buff. You can choose to put her in any team outside of glacial damage focus team just because you want a healer to provide buff from this set. But this doesn't mean she is a bad healer. It just that team or the player just wouldn't be able to take advantage of her entire kit. The same goes for Yinlin.
But even the damage can be easily taken away from her. How? By skipping String Master. Yinlin effectively costs twice as much as any other 5-star character to fully unlock, because without String Master, what does she do? You think it's bad that new 5-stars have replaced Yinlin's roles? How about being straight up low diffed by a free character? In a Jinchi team, Yinlin used to be a definitive best in slot. But if you didn't have String Master, Yuenwu was nearly equal in terms of value. Not only that, he also didn't have nearly as many usability issues due to his 2-second field time. Even in a Cheng Li team, she would lose to a level 20 Thundah purely because her field time is again like 2 seconds. This would allow Cheng Li to use 2 intro skills, charging her forte much faster. In an Encore team, Thundah is already best in slot, and with Havoc Rover you would much rather use Don Jin. The only team where she would still be best in slot if we looked at 4-star characters as competition is Sheng Liao or Kalcharo. Other 5-star characters are simply harder to replace. Who is going to compete with Jian or Camellia in the AoE DPS role when they don't have their signatures? Or if we look at Jinchi, who is going to beat Jinchi at that same investment? No one. Other 5-star characters remain at the top no matter the investment. Yinlin needs a higher level of investment just to become an alternative at best.
You are comparing an orange to an apple.
Last time I brought up this point, many people said that this is the case with every limited character in Wuthering Waves. The damage drop from Verdant Summit to Luster's Razor is just as big as String Master to Cosmic Ripples, they said, but the big difference between these two situations is that one is a main DPS, and the other is sub-DPS. GN is the vast majority of his team's damage, which makes it so that pulling for Verdant Summit ends up being more worth it than pulling a String Master specifically for your Yinlin. Ultimately, your team is built around a DPS. Even in a Yinlin Chengli quickswap team, you should pull for Blazing Brilliance before String Master. If you pull a String Master, you are more likely to put it on Encore than your Yinlin. The conclusion here is that Yinlin is just a horribly inefficient pull. If you want her to be usable, you need to pull her signature, but if you're going to pull a signature for anyone, Yinlin is not the one you should be aiming for. This is more of an account-dependent thing, because if you have a Zheji, Encore, and a Yinlin all on separate teams, String Master is a good pull. But this more so just proves that String Master is strong, not Yinlin. It's the best weapon in the game in my opinion.
How does that prove Yinlin isn't a good unit? I can agree wholeheartedly with this point. If Yinlin kit is at the level of Genshin Impact Data level of bad, impracticality, or nicheness.
But if we want to save Yinlin, what can we do with her? Ultimately, it's hard to fix a character who is already in the game, especially when saying just give new teammates is not an option, because of the fact that Sheng Liao already has a theoretical perfect synergy with Yinlin. What Yinlin needs is a team where she is the definitive best in slot, where no one can actually replace her. This can be done by making yet another Electro DPS with primarily liberation damage. This would be the third one in a row, however, and Sheng Liao proved to us that this can just completely fail. This is why we need this character to be encouraged to not swap off. Think of GN, a character who has a strict duration during his DPS time, and wants to consistently keep attacking with short animations. With Sheng Liao, swapping is not a large DPS loss. With this new DPS, it should be a big loss.
Wait, how does that help Yinlin out exactly? Promote Resonant Liberation Hyper Carry to maximizing her auto buff? Xian Li already exists and you can just choose to stay on him until Yinlin buff runs out. No one is obligated to do quick swap playstyle.
Next point would be to give her an extra weapon option. With characters like Camellia and Cheng-Li, you will do just fine on Emerald of Genesis. Jinchi will still do her job fine on Lustrous Razor, but Yinlin just loses too much by swapping to Cosmic Ripples. Even when we look at other limited 5-star weapons, GN will work fine on Ages of Harvest and Cheng-Li on Red Spring, but Yinlin on Rhyme Draped? Nope, might as well run Cosmic.
Again, you are comparing units of different roles. Yinlin is a buffer and a sub DPS. No way she will be able to keep up with the limited 5-star DPS units.
So we need a new Rectifier character who gives us an actually good Yinlin weapon. Maybe Phoebe ends up giving Yinlin a new weapon. Who knows? Ultimately, I think Yinlin has had it the worst of any of the limited 5-stars.
I have another question. What makes a good Yinlin weapon? You have never addressed this point throughout this video, and you can't just bring that up and brush it aside like this. Tell us, the viewer, what she needs in your opinion, so that we can understand where you are coming from, and what is your logic, which would lead into a good topic to discuss.
And if you scroll back down onto my videos, you can see I literally predicted Yinlin's fall from grace, but it ended up being even worse than I had anticipated.
You're probably right because of it is a gacha game, and as gacha game grows, the more niche will be filling out and the more generalists will eventually fall off. The one who can still stand strong is the one that can find their own niche. I'm not saying you cannot have different opinion than me or the majority of the players. Having a different opinion makes things more interesting. I came across this video because of the almighty algorithm, but I clicked the video because I want to pull for Yinlin. Hearing different point of view can temper my expectation. Your point about she is heavily relied on her heavy attack / forte to do her job properly, but she can miss it or she is very vulnerable during that animation and she has tight rotation is excellent. I didn't know that before watching your video, which tempered my expectation and made me more excited with how I can play her with Mr. Cover rules. And that's the video. Also, that's it for me. Thank you for watching until this point. I hope you guys will have a good night and a great day ahead of you. Bye bye!